Hey team, how are you? And welcome to The Experience with Rehman Cee, where we talk to real people about real stories on real life. And today we have Janelle, Christa on. Hey Janelle, how are you?
I'm doing fabulous. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Awesome, good. I'm glad we've got you. It's been a couple of weeks since we've been trying to organize it. Where are you in the world?
I live in Santa Barbara, California.
Oh, lucky you. Have you always lived there?
I've lived here for about 8 years. I'm originally from Salt Lake City, and then I had a few years in Los Angeles as well.
Okay, cool. Nice. All great places that you've been to. So I'm going to get into the show. So my question to you is, what's your message to the world, Janelle?
Well, I have quite a few messages to the world, but my biggest message to the world is something I'm working on right now is a book called Choice, How to Embody Your Greatest Superpower. I really believe choice is your greatest superpower. So that's my big message to the world to, I hope to help awaken in people.
And like, how is that book near completion? Is it completed or you're about to embark on it?
That book is completed. It's being edited right now. But I have another book that's going to be coming out prior to that one because it's done and it's designed and edited and formatted and everything. So it was a year of a lot of writing. And now it's just, getting them all out one by one.
Are you a natural writer, or is it like something that you've picked up along the journey?
I think I've always been a writer, but for years, I could never finish anything. I started a million different books, a million different screenplays, and I could never finish them. And over the last couple of years, I've just been finally getting through all the tedious work of getting them all done.
Awesome. So what other books have you written then?
I released a book this year earlier called Spiritual Ninja. And that one I released probably a few months ago. That was the first one that I've actually published. And then this next one that's going to be released in the next couple of weeks is called The Harmony Keys.
Okay. So what's your motivation behind writing?
Well, I write screenplays and I write books. And I've started a blog. I think my main purpose in writing right now is really to bring messages of unity and really dive into humanity and what makes us beautiful, and learning how to really be humans and taking everything that I've learned and putting that on paper to hopefully make that a little easier for other people.
Wow, we're going to have a fascinating conversation by the sounds of things. So talk to me a little bit more about this philosophy of yours. Let's go back. Let's figure out how it was all constructed. So talk to me a little bit more about your background, your parents. What was their parenting style?
Well, I have an interesting background. By the time I was 18, I had 14 different siblings. They were all from different parents. I had a lot of, I was adopted by my stepfather when I was 2. My biological father remarried. I had lots of different parents, adopted parents, step parents, and half siblings. So it was a interesting and pretty chaotic way of living.
Were you born in Utah?
I was, yeah.
Did you have like a Mormon tradition?
No,
okay. This was just unconventional naturally.
Right, exactly. So I had lots of LDS friends and family and stuff, but no one in my
right, immediate circle. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So talk about your like the environment, how you were raised. What was the values and the culture that was you were absorbing?
My parents, we came from a pretty lower class economic background, and so my parents really, what they instilled in me was just work ethic. They worked a lot. That's most of my childhood. Is I just remember them working a lot, trying to make ends meet. And so I kind of became a little mom very, very young. and help to take care of my brothers and the family and everything. So it I'm having a hard time exactly pinpointing my parents' parenting style. It was a little separate. I don't know how to put that in words, but
separate means it was detached, or separate means it was okay. So do you have a good understanding with your parents now?
Yeah. I've grown. I've done a lot of work. I spent my entire 20s in therapy and doing a lot of interpersonal work from my childhood and my adolescence, because I kind of felt like I was on my own most of my life. So I became a young mom when I was 21 years old. And so I had to then learn how to become a parent and a human being and put everything into place and figure everything out moving forward.
So what was your identity before motherhood?
I didn't have one. So I really didn't. I think growing up with so many different siblings, so many different parents, I had no sense of self whatsoever. I was diagnosed as bipolar when I was about 12 years old. And so I was living in so many different worlds within my own body. I grew up with a lot of, in my adolescent years, like experienced a lot of different types of abuse and things. And so I didn't have an identity or sense of self. I didn't have any sense of boundaries whatsoever. I felt like I was an object for everybody else. And so that is actually what my book, Spiritual Ninja, is. It doesn't get into my personal story, but it's really the applicable tools on how to hold boundaries and energetically protect yourself and feel connected and grounded, even when the world around you is really chaotic and crazy. So yeah, I mean, I hope that answers your question a little bit.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, so it was obviously a very chaotic period of your life, and so what was the next stage like then? So you got pregnant. Did you stay with the father? Did you guys try and direct a course, or was it just like you wanted to go on your own? How did it manifest?
So it was pretty remarkable because, like I said, I had no real sense of self whatsoever. And when I got pregnant, that was the best blessing in the entire world for me, at 21 years old. Which many people would think like, oh my gosh, that's, that's horrible. You weren't even in a steady relationship. And I had previously gotten really addicted to drugs after, in my adolescent years and in those early, young adult years, because that was my way of dealing with things. And when it was quite amazing. Had gotten out of rehab and I was clean, and I got pregnant maybe 2 weeks later. And so I immediately had a reason to make my life better. And it was really a huge goal of mine to create a level of balance and stability in my daughter's life. And so her and father and we did try to work it out. We weren't necessarily a match, and we were very young and unequipped with skills on how to cope. And so that didn't really work out between the two of us, but I was very, very committed to my little girl to give her a different life than what I had. And I've certainly, made lots of mistakes, all parents do, along the way, but I have 100% always tried to show up. And that's been my primary reason why I've been able to get where I am in my life today.
Okay. So talk to me about motherhood.
Motherhood is the most remarkable, beautiful, incredible, and challenging thing that I think a human being, or parenthood, can really endure. It's the most beautiful way for us to learn about ourselves, because we have these little mirrors to reflect to us everything, the beauty in us and the stuff that maybe we don't want to think about, maybe the stuff from when we were a child, and the things that happened to us or that we went through at that age. And now, especially with my daughter, I have this little person that literally looks like me, and I see her and I'm remembering, she's in going into 8th grade, and I'm remembering my 8th grade year and what I was going through at that time. And I really believe that the only kind of parenting books you ever really need to read are not really even parenting books. They're personal growth books. They're books where you learn how to work with your own child within yourself or adolescent within yourself. And you work with all of those things, parenting really from the inside out. And so that's motherhood in a nutshell for me. And I have a little boy too. They're 10 years apart. I had him when I was 31 years old. So I'm in a much different state in my life now with him as I was with my daughter 10 years prior. So it's been an all different world with him as my little boy. I'm much more mature now, hopefully, than I was at 21. So it's been very, very interesting, and I wouldn't trade it for the world. It's my number one most important role, I think, that I've ever taken on in my life, and being a wife, of course, too. But I have lots of roles. I'm a writer, an actress, a producer, all of these different things. But motherhood for me is really the game changer.
Okay. So what has the journey been? So carry on the journey for me from, from your first child to now.
Mm-hmm. So after I had my daughter, well, actually, while I was pregnant with my daughter, I experienced a lot of loss. I had 3 people that were close to me pass away, and one of them was my younger. He was my stepbrother, but we grew up together. I didn't ever see him as a stepbrother. He was my brother, and it was very shocking. He was a teenager, and it was really, really hard. But it was one of the things that really catapulted me toward wanting to create a really good life for myself and my daughter, and allow myself to honor him and his life through making my life better. And so from there, I kind of went on this journey of self-improvement of what I, at 21 years old, thought self-improvement meant. And at that point, that meant getting a really good job and, paying, not having any kind of debt, and looking really pretty. And, I became very image conscious on what success meant at that time. And so I did that. I bought a house, I paid off my car. I, had all of these things, achievements that I had checked off. And then.
Where were you at this point?
I was in Salt Lake City.
Okay.
And, I got amazing, really high level job. I was traveling around the country, and it was.
How did you manage that? What was the career structure to get you to that position? You started where?
Well, I actually started as surprisingly a rental car agent in the airport, and it just seemed like some kind of random job while I was trying to go back to college. But I ended up breaking international sales records and was just killing it. And at a very young age, started making over $100,000 a year and was really successful. And then some trainers.
How do you do that, though? I mean, is that something that you got through a natural aptitude, through the experience of the roughness that you had, or what was the reason for being so successful in a sales career?
I think it probably boils down to my ability to take care of people, and that probably does stem from when I was younger and needing to take care of everybody. And so I've and also on some level, probably because of the different abuse and things I experienced, I became very, very incredibly in tune with human beings and emotional cues of being able to look at people and know if I was safe and how they were feeling. And so I could read people really well. And so I just developed these relationships with customers, and they trusted me, and I was never trying to sell them anything. I just really saw myself as an educator and a helper, and I ended up just killing it, and really crushing it. It was pretty amazing. And so a consulting firm picked me up, and I then traveled across the country teaching other people how to do that, and how to embody those skills. So that's really where my coaching career started, was when I was very young. But I was doing that job, and I was away from my daughter a lot, and that was really hard, and that wasn't really working for me.
Who was taking care of her?
She was with her dad or my sister, and it was really painful. And I started developing a lot of health issues, and that's actually what catapulted me into a whole other journey, because I wasn't really getting the help that I needed from Western medicine. And so eventually started looking into more holistic health and spiritual development, and started shifting my world around what self-improvement actually meant on a much deeper level.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned that you were diagnosed as bipolar.
Mm-hmm.
Bipolar, is that something that you're born with, or do you feel that the circumstances affected your mental health?
I think it's probably a combination of both, because it is a genetic thing, but not everybody gets that gene activated, if you will,
Right.
depending on their environment and depending on how stable things are. So I do have family members that have that same diagnosis. And so I think it is a combination of both. And I think that's part of my big thing of trying to do everything I possibly can in my power to not activate that gene in my own children, to hopefully break that cycle.
How does it affect your performance?
Well,
I mean,
now,
back then and then now.
yeah, back then it was really very severe. And it was for a very long time. And it took a lot of different approaches to really work on healing it. People say that bipolar is something that you have for the rest of your life, and it's like this horrible death sentence. I mean, it's really quite awful when you look at the statistics. 20% of people with bipolar actually do commit suicide. That's really high. That's like 1 in 5 or something, which is crazy. Right. So at this point, I don't really suffer any symptoms at all whatsoever. I've really taken made it my life's work to create that level of balance in my body. So that's been a huge accomplishment that I'm continually working to maintain. But yeah, it was really difficult when I was younger, especially being a young mom and traveling and doing and coming off of drugs. And then I hadn't really dealt with the fact of why I had been doing all of those drugs, what I was trying to escape. And so I started, I believe, really trying to escape in a new way, which was perfectionism, trying to be perfect, trying to look this certain way, trying to act a certain way, trying to appeal a certain way, trying to attract a certain man. And it was a really crazy decade. That whole decade was really crazy.
But you came out of rehab. So wouldn't you have had to have dealt with the escapism to come out of rehab?
A little bit. I felt like, the rehab that I had gone through, you go into a little bit of the therapy and stuff like that, but you really are just trying to the main goal of rehab is just to get you off of drugs. It's not really to go into everything else. At least then. Rehabs have improved now, and they're definitely doing better. But back then it was really the main goal was just to get you off of the drugs and give you more drugs to get you off of those drugs. So no, I didn't really get the full spectrum of what I felt like. I mean, I'm still doing so much work and continue to do so much work, and I will for the rest of my life to heal.
Right. And so you said you were traveling, you were getting disenfranchised because you weren't seeing your daughter, you started getting health issues. So what were those health issues?
So I started having a lot of chronic illness and developed a ton of food allergies. Um, and what was interesting was for years, I was in so much pain and I was so sick, and food would make me sick. Everything would make me sick. And it got to the point where I really wasn't able to work because I was so sick. And what that's when I started doing more spiritual work and looking into, because I went doctor after doctor. I had every kind of procedure you can think of to try to figure out what was going on with me. And then I started doing more spiritual work, and I started unraveling this whole world of emotions that get stuffed inside of us. And I started working with healing all of those old emotions that I had stuffed and not been able to deal with. And so when it took quite some time, and I was actually working finally, I was no longer working with the company teaching people sales. I'd shifted more into coaching people on a spiritual level. It was everything that I was learning. I was then finally going, I want to bring this back to people, kind of going to my roots as a helper. And so it took some time, but eventually really got to the root of the health issues that I was having. I was having chronic infections, like just everything was going wrong. And finally, what I realized was during my self-improvement perfectionist phase, I had got breast implants, and was actually having a systemic reaction to the breast implants. They were making me really sick. It was almost like an allergic reaction to all they're filled with neurotoxins and carcinogens and horrible, awful ingredients. And so that was ultimately what was causing all of those illnesses on a physical level. But
so I was going to get clarity on that. So you're saying that the implants were physiologically, biologically affecting you, or you're saying that because you had implants, there was a psychological effect to you?
It was both. It was because what I realized was I got these implants because, one, I thought I wasn't pretty enough or good enough, or, I was just, like I had mentioned earlier, or I was an object, right? I was just kind of objectifying myself in some way, trying to appease a certain society standard of what I thought beautiful meant. And so it was coming from a really ugly place to begin with. And so it was almost as if I was stuffing all of those emotions inside of me with this physical manifestation of implants. And those implants are made of, I mean, if you look at the ingredient list, it's like shocking that that's even possible that people put these in our bodies, but they don't tell you what's in them. There's like aluminum and lead and mercury, just so many horrible, awful things. But what was incredible was more so than even the fact that they're so toxic was the toxic emotions and the feelings that I was really stuffing inside of me by getting these implants. And so when I finally discovered that, and I had surgery and had them removed, I started working with those feelings and those emotions. And so not only was I detoxing physically, but I was also detoxing on a more spiritual, mental, emotional level, and really healing all of those feelings underneath it. So I could release all these. And it was interesting because it'd been years and years and years that I'd been gaslit by all these doctors. Like, everyone was saying that I was fine. I was fine. I was making it up. I was just kind of written off as some dumb, dramatic girl. And so really working to heal with all of that as well, and stepping into my own level of sovereignty and speaking my truth, even if no one believes me, and even if I seem like I'm crazy, right? And so that was a really big awakening moment for me. But I had them in my body for a really long time. So it made me sick for a long, long time. And it really quite ruined my life until I figured that out. And it's just been uphill from there.
Yeah. Was it like an instant switch, or was it a gradual progression?
It was actually quite amazing, because even the day that I got out of surgery, I felt better, even though had just been cut open and, had a 3-hour surgery. I actually felt better inside of my body, like a swelling inside of me and inflammation inside of me. And it was pretty remarkable because within 3 months I was able to eat foods that I hadn't been able to eat in years. I actually got pregnant 2 weeks after getting them taken out. So I hadn't been able to get pregnant at all. So it was really quite immediate. That being said, I still feel like I have to be really conscious about taking care of my body because it was in such a state of inflammation for so many years that it's still healing. It's been, oh my gosh, it's been almost 5 years now since I got them taken out. So that's amazing.
Yeah. And you said you started focusing on your spiritual side.
Yeah.
What's your definition of spiritual side?
Well, that's constantly evolving, and I think it will constantly evolve. For me, spirituality as a young child, growing up in Utah, and there's a very heavily emphasis on the LDS religion. And I think there's a lot of beauty in a lot of the things that the LDS religion teaches. But there was also, where I grew up, a lot of shame in a lot of my friends and family members, and just in society in general, that if you dressed a certain way or if you did a certain thing, like kiss a boy or whatnot, there was a lot of shame that was associated with it. And so I really rejected the idea of religion, and didn't want to have any part of that. And so really discovering spirituality on a different level was opening up to the fact that spirituality didn't have to be anyone else's rules. And it didn't have to be, that you're bad or you're wrong or you're full of shame if you do something. It really was your connection with a higher power. And that connection is the most important thing to me, more than anything in the whole world, because I'm nothing without that connection. And so it is constantly evolving on what that looks like for me, and it's constantly growing. But it's really, my definition to spirituality is a connection with something bigger than you.
Okay, so where are you right now? Where is your state
with spirituality?
With your mental, your psychological, mental well-being? How do you see yourself? What's your identity? Who are you?
Yeah. Well, I'm great. I'm really, really good. I'm really grounded. I feel very, very connected, and I feel very, very focused on being a human, really. For many years, I did get kind of lost in spirituality, and almost like a fantasy of spirituality. It became an escape as well. And now spirituality is really just embodying my humanity and embodying all of the different things that make me human, and learning how to work with this body and spirit and mind and interconnecting them and interweaving them all together to be one cohesive unit. So I'm really, really good in that area, and I feel really good at this moment. But like with everything, that is an ebb and a flow. Our relationship with God or the universe, or whatever people feel comfortable calling this higher power, it's just like any other friendship. It's an ebb and a flow, and there's times where that friendship is not as strong, and I have to put more focus into it and be able to receive that love. And so it's constantly changing as well, and I think accepting that allows it to grow even more. You
mentioned that spirituality was an escape for you. How is spirituality an escape, and now you've got a better sense of proportion on it?
Yeah. So it was kind of interesting because I remember one time I was working with a therapist, and she said, Janelle, you went from getting high on drugs to getting high on spirits. And it was true. It was like, and I remember at the time I was kind of upset. But for me, especially with a bipolar background, spirituality can get a little dangerous in a way, because when you're bipolar, you can go on these manic highs of feeling so, in ancient Greece, they called it the divine state, because you're so connected. But it wasn't grounded. There was no sense of being in reality. And so I was making decisions that were just not healthy. It was just based on these ideas that of feeling really high and high on these spirits. And I got really, really into, which I still am on some level, but it looks a lot different. I got really into like the new age movement of you create your own reality. And I know that to be true, but I also now know that it's a lot bigger than just me creating my reality. And so being able to ground in spirituality, I think sometimes, I guess I'm circling around to say, sometimes for me, spirituality became a bit of a fantasy world because it was somewhere out there in the cosmos. And it was this big, big thing that I could tap into. And it got me really disconnected from the little things in front of me. The beauty of the sand and the grass and the trees and the leaves and the animals, and being grateful for food and all of these wonderful things right in front of us. It became, about angels and the heavens and this and this and this and this and the afterlife, and I wasn't really creating a beautiful heaven on earth for me to live within. So it's been an evolving journey, and I have to check myself when I start to get a little bit too high on the spirits, and bring it back home.
Yeah, it's almost like you have to go from one side of the pendulum to the other to get into the middle, right?
Totally.
Okay, so we're talking about spirituality. Let's go a little bit deep on that. So you obviously believe that there's a higher power of some sort. So generally speaking, if there's a higher power, there's always meaning and purpose, because you've been created. One would assume that there's no reason to create you for no reason, right? So what is the meaning of life?
It might sound superficial, but I really truly believe the meaning of life is to consciously create fun and consciously create success for ourselves, because I think that we are within the imagination of our creator. We are imagination. We are constantly moving energy. We are verbs. We are not nouns like we have been taught we are. And by channeling that creativity and imagination through us, by manifesting what our dreams are into the physical realm, allows us to be connected, and allows us to live out the fantasy of our creator, because it's a lie that our creator wants us to suffer. Our creator wants to be able to live their dream as well, and live their dream through us. So I believe that even if it sounds a little superficial to begin with, really consciously creating whatever fun is on a high level, and whatever our creative passions are, and bringing that into a reality, I believe that is our purpose.
Okay, so our purpose is to express our creative passions. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Okay. So I always ask this question: what's the reason as to why the creator would create us to have that as our purpose?
Why the creator would create us as for fun, for joy, for beauty, for the experience, and for the expression. I think that our creator, we're just we on a grand scale are a mirror image of our creator, and our creator lives through us and all living things. And we are a reflection of that, and our multidimensionality is a reflection of our creator. We have multiple different ages. We have multiple different races. We're you know, male, we're female, we're black, we're white, we're gay, we're straight, we're, you know, all of these different layers of creation. And I believe that we're all interconnected and just a mirror, a physical mirror of our creator. So it's it's for fun, you know. Like, I really believe that it's so we can have fun and we can grow. I mean, ultimately, more than anything, it's so we can grow, and so our creator can grow. I think that's our greatest desire, is to grow, and we get that from our creator, and they grow through us.
Okay. So what does the future hold for you? What is the future looking like right now? Let's paint a picture.
Yeah.
Let's imagine you at the age of 60. What are you doing?
Well, it's a bit unknown. I do work with in meditation with my future self on a regular basis. I think that's really important. That's what actually got me through a lot of the really crazy, intense periods of my life, including in my adolescent years, was to imagine working with my future and where I want to go. So I think that there's a lot of value in that. If I were to envision my most optimal future, I would be probably making films and touching lots and lots of people with those films, and helping to awaken people to a more cohesive way of living with each other. So that's hopefully what the future holds for me. But that's on an individual level. I'm hoping on a larger scale, the future for our world is that we are more conscious, and we are looking at bringing consciousness into all the things that we are doing. And we can ask ourselves questions like, is this choice that I'm making coming from dogma? Is this choice that I'm making coming from a level of partnership with nature? And I hope that as I integrate these things into myself, and can reflect that, and other people do the same, we can create a more conscious world together, and a real paradigm shift from where we are now.
What's your so you mentioned that you moved from coaching, from being a coach to a spiritual teacher or a spiritual coach.
Mm-hmm.
How does that work? How is one a spiritual coach?
Well, that's evolved as well. I really worked as a healer for a lot of years. People would come to me, and I would perform healings, doing different techniques like, you know, Reiki or Kahiloha or Lomi Lomi, or different techniques from shamans. But what I realized was that I didn't really want people to come to me to be their healer. I wanted people to realize that they are their own healer. So I shifted back to coaching, which was just taking everything that I had learned, and I created my own programs and my own healing modalities that are self-healing that I could teach people. So I coach people on utilizing those methodologies, and help people break through different blocks and become more attuned and in tune with techniques and tools to be able to better their lives by integrating spirituality into it. And what's interesting about that is I don't everyone I work with is not necessarily like quote unquote spiritual, but it's all spiritual work, regardless of what we're working on. If we're working on bringing in a passion project of someone wants to bring, like just as an example, create a business of sustainable farms, we work through the spiritual blocks. Maybe we don't even name that, but we work through those blocks that are preventing you from creating that in your life. And so you can do that. And so you can bring through this creative passion of your creator through you.
Okay. So what is your image of God? Who is God?
I believe, kind of as I was saying earlier, we're a reflection of God. And so if I were to put every human being and every plant and every animal and every mineral all together, we're a reflection of that. So God to me is both masculine and feminine, is both it contains everything and all that is, but loves us through all of that and is waiting for us to go through whatever we need to go through so we can grow. I have a very strong relationship with God, but God is constantly changing on what God's appearance is and whatever is going to help me in that moment. I've had meditations where God has appeared to me as a swan. I've had meditations where God has appeared to me as Jesus. I've had meditations where God has appeared to me as a beautiful, mermaid. It's for me, that image is constantly changing and we're constantly changing and we're reflecting that. But what the problem is that we're made in the image of God, but we put our image on God, our anger, our rage, our suffering, our desire to punish. We've put that onto God, and that's not God. God is all loving and allows us to have free will and allows us to do whatever we need to do and go as dark as we need to go and make ourselves as limited as we can, so we can grow. So as we begin to remember who God is rather than projecting our image onto God, that's where I believe we can really see God.
So if you imagine the universe in its expansive nature, if you look at the detail of the atom and genes, and you see that there's so much complexity to the universe, is it fathomable that we can even conceive the idea of being in the image of something that we can't fully understand?
Right. Yeah. No, I mean, that's why for me, the image of God is constantly changing because it's a metaphor for, this um, depth that we just can't understand. That is just so immensely profound and beautiful and awe-inspiring that it's hard. You can't put. It's a mystery. That's the beauty. That is the real beauty. It's like you can't put God in a box. When you try to put God in a box, you've lost spirituality altogether. You have lost God altogether. When you can just allow God to be the mystery that God is, that's where the beauty can really be found.
So, who was Buddha? Who was Muhammad? Who was Jesus? Who was Moses? Who are these people?
I believe they're people that have understood that they have God within them, and have been able to embody that on a very deep level and reflect that to us because we all do. I don't believe that God has favorites. I don't believe that, Jesus or Buddha or Muhammad were favorites. I think that we all are seen equally in the eyes of God. And I believe that we all have that within us. And it's a matter of finding that and embodying that and shining that to other people that we can also be just as Jesus and Muhammad and Buddha are.
So Einstein, he developed the theory of relativity, special case of relativity, right? E equals mc squared. Not everybody has the capacity to develop that level of mathematics.
Right.
But once he's developed the formula, then everybody has the capacity to understand what he's developed and use it.
Yeah.
So from that analogy, is it really that we all have access to the same level of knowledge in terms of spirituality?
Well, I believe that it's all there within us, but we may not have the life experience to be able to or we may have the blocks, or we may be within our own internal prisons to be able to access it. And it might take 1,000 lifetimes before we can get there. I do believe in incarnation and reincarnation.
Where does I'll let you finish off your sentence, but where does the person who's going to be a human come from?
Say that a different way. I'm confused.
To reincarnate, we have to come from something.
Mm.
So
Yeah.
we have to incarnate to reincarnate, right?
Right.
Where are we coming from to be a human?
Yeah. I believe we have a soul, we have a spirit, and we have a higher self. And I believe our higher self is, the all-knowing being that is with us every single lifetime. I believe our soul is with us every single lifetime, and our spirit is kind of like our personality that we take on when we're in a body. So I believe that I actually believe that Earth is also a realm of heaven. So it's not that I believe like you go off to this place called heaven. I believe that we're already there. We just can't really see it because we have lots of veils in front of us. But I believe that we change form, but our consciousness expands. I go through this meditation with people, and it's really quite profound, where I place people in a meditative state, and you go into a home, and that home is maybe a home that's special to you. And you go into this room, and the room is filled with all of your belongings, all of your awards, all of your clothes, all of your friends, all of your family, everything from your lifetime. And we slowly begin throughout the meditation to walk around and take a tour, look at the slideshow of all of these things. And then we start to take those things away. The family goes away, the friends go away, the furniture goes away. Eventually, you're standing in front of a mirror. You're in your work clothes, the things that identify you as who you believe you are. And you eventually lose the clothes, and then you lose the hair dye, and you lose the tattoos and the earrings and all of these different things. And you're eventually standing naked in front of the mirror, and then your body goes away, and then the house goes away, and the mirror goes away, and the room goes away, and you're in space. You're in this unknown, and you're still there. It's the most remarkable, amazing thing with every single person I've taken through that process. You're still there. Your consciousness, your being, is your essence, your soul is still there. And it maybe doesn't know how to make sense of everything, but it's still there. And I believe that that's what happens when you cross over and you die. You still have this consciousness and this level of being of who you are. And then you want to continue to grow that. So I don't know that it's necessarily that you go anywhere. It's just that we're not really aware of where we are to begin with.
Right. I mean, yeah, I mean, you can have parallel universes, right? Dimensions.
Mm-hmm.
That's not unscientific, but I'm trying to understand if you evolve from a human and you come back as human, or are you coming from like the Hindu traditions where you're moving from an insect to something else, and then you're becoming a human? What's your kind of understanding?
I do believe that you actually start as a mineral, and you go through a whole process of I do believe that you go from a mineral to being a plant to being animals. I think you have multiple lifetimes as animals. I think you then jump from the animal kingdom to the human kingdom. And then I believe that there's other jumps from here, from the human kingdom to a more multidimensional kingdom, that I think we're discovering here on Earth now, where it is beyond physical time and space and higher dimensions. So I do believe that there's a process, and I think that God touches every single living thing on this planet and in this universe, and we go through that experience with them.
Cool. So let me ask you a couple of short questions about yourself. Are you an introvert or an extrovert?
I'm definitely an introvert, but really have to be with people too, but I'm not the type of person that goes and talks to strangers, or loves being in a big crowded room. I like to have my space and I like to be recharged in that space, but I also have to be around people that are important to me and close to me. And so it's not like I'm, a hermit or anything.
Are you an idealist or a realist?
I would lean more toward idealist for sure. But because when I begin to become too realist, I can get depressed and jaded, and lose a sense of magic and mystery, and lose the connection with imagination and God. So I do try to be more of a wide-eyed idealist and really look at life through those wide eyes of magic and enchantment. I think that that's important.
Would you say you're emotional or rational?
Definitely emotional.
Okay. Are you practical or intellectual?
Very practical. And everyone that works with me would say the same thing, that all of my books that, are all very, very practical, is making esoteric ideas practical and tangible, and demystifying mysticism in a way that is tangible and makes sense to people on a very practical level, that even if you don't believe in certain things, we can talk about them in ways that make sense.
Okay. And do you prefer risk or are you risk averse?
I'm super risky, way too risky.
Okay. And do you like certainty or uncertainty?
I think a blend of both, actually. I think that if things are too certain, I get bored. But if they don't have a level of some kind of certainty, I get a little nervous.
Do you believe we're here to create our identity or to fulfill our identity?
I would have to say a mixture of both. I think that you create your identity to ultimately fulfill what you really are and remember who you really are.
Okay, so then it's basically you're fulfilling, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So do you feel that this whole journey that you've been on is, it was you already knew what you had to do. This was already your identity. It was just that the journey had taken you off that. Imagine if you'd been in a normal family, whatever normal is, but in a more stable environment. Would you be who you are right now?
Going back to what we talked about a moment ago, with a spirit and a soul and a higher self, no, my spirit wouldn't be who I am. My personality would not be who I am, but my soul, I think, is pretty consistent. So it's a combination of everything.
Okay. If you were an animal, what kind of animal would you describe yourself as?
I don't know. It would be back and forth between being a lion and being a lamb. 100%, because I can be the sweetest person on the entire planet, most gentle and loving, but I can also be extremely ferocious as well. So
Yeah. So you're gentle and ferocious. If you had to pull out 3 characteristics, what would be the third quality?
Gentle, fierce, and probably loving. Yeah.
Are you happy?
Utterly. Yes, I'm very happy.
Cool. So we're coming to near the end. What would you like to talk about?
Well, I feel like I've said a lot. It's interesting because I've done probably 30 different podcast interviews, and we definitely have never gone this personal before. So this has been really interesting for me to hear my own thoughts out loud in a public forum. So,
and and I was aware, but you did block a lot of those thoughts. I mean, a lot wasn't covered.
yeah. Yeah, it's interesting because I've written all these books, right? Which I'm publishing like 5 different books right now, and they're all these kind of how-to books, right? Like how one of the books is called Chakra Grub, and it's a book on meditative recipes, and then it's food recipes, so how to eat and how to nourish yourself, how to do this, how to do that. And yet I've been working on a memoir for the last, I don't even know, 8 years or something, and I've been trying to focus more on it recently, and it's amazing because I'm the type of person I can hammer out, 50,000 words in a couple of weeks if I put my mind to it, really. And the memoir, I think, is like 10,000 words. It's been the hardest thing for me to write. It's been so difficult for me, and it's interesting because it's all it's a different type of memoir. I'm going through meditative journeys and psychedelic journeys and all these different journeys I've had, and kind of tried to put them in place of past life regression experiences that I've had. And it's so personal. And I feel like we just kind of skirted around that a little bit. And it's just amazing to me. I'm realizing the introvert question you had, I'm like, yeah, I'm really good at telling other people what to do. But when it comes to talking about me, I'm kind of like, oh. So thanks for pulling that out of me a little.
Yeah, no problem. Happy to do it in a round to like 0 to 16 or 0 to 21. That wouldn't be.
I'm like, oh my God, talking to me about my childhood. No one has ever talked to me about this publicly. How can I avoid these questions as much as possible?
I hear you. I hear you. So they say you're the average of the 5 people that you most hang out with. So if you wanted to raise your average, who would the 5 people be, past, present, or future, that you'd want to surround yourself with, hang out with?
Oh, by far, Jesus, of course, Tony Robbins, Eminem.
Why Eminem?
Eminem, I know that seems funny, but he is one of the reasons why I'm alive. I know that sounds extreme, but as a teenager, he taught me that it was okay to be angry, that it was okay to be mad, and that you could go from rags to riches simply by being yourself and being creative and allowing that creativity to channel through you, no matter how offensive it was. And it's really thanks to him. He was like an archetype for me, I know, as almost like a god, like a rap god, but a real teacher for me. And I'm so indebted to him and so grateful to him for that. And then probably one of my great teachers who I have spent a lot of time with, who I love greatly. His name is Jack Purcell, and he's a channeler for Lazarus, and has brought forth about 50 years of spiritual teachings. So as much time as I could get with him. And I don't know, I got to think on the 5th person. I got to think about a really strong, amazing woman, because I just named off 5 men or 4 men. So yeah.
Okay. So what's your kind of conclusion? What would be your final message? How would you sum up your existence so far?
Going back probably to the beginning, that choice really is our superpower. And I could have allowed my childhood and my adolescence, which we didn't get terribly into, to ruin me and imprison me for the rest of my life. And I could have allowed my bipolar diagnosis to imprison me, and my health conditions to imprison me, and all of the different things that I've gone through in my life to imprison me. And I have chosen to not allow any of those things to be a prison for me. I know that only I am my own prison, and if I allow that. And so you can choose a greater life and a greater reality, and choose imagination and innocence and magic over the darkness in the world if you want to. If you truly desire that, you can, and your life can be so much more magical.
Awesome. Well, listen, thank you so much for hanging out with me. I appreciate you.
Thank you so much. It was such a pleasure to connect with you.
No worries. So take care. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.